Just calm down, folks. Just calm down.
Well. We are back again, and you can already tell 2 seconds into this video how this video is going to go. We are back for another edition of the Best Boys Center Ice podcast, day 2 of the conference finals. We were on last night to recap the end of game 1 between Florida and Carolina, which Florida took 1-0. Took the lead in series 1-0. They won that game 5-2 yesterday. But as usual, before we get started, we have to do our usual shout outs and promotion of the show. So, first off, we want to thank the Refocused Radio Network with Shemaya Reed, who are the people that we get to have our show put on their network, the radio network, every day. Every show we do is put on all during the week. So, if we do any shows on Saturdays, Sundays, are put on Mondays, but every show the day afterwards is on the network. As Dad always likes to say, it's always on Spreaker just to listen, but with some of these graphics, it's almost a better option to watch it instead. But it's on Spreaker. It's also on our Best Boys Center Ice podcast YouTube channel, which we're trying to grow and get subscribers. So if you go and find us on the YouTube, Best Boys Center Ice, leave us leave us comments, subscriptions. All of that works. Obviously, Dad does his post games on TikTok. So I imagine there's probably gonna be one tomorrow that he'll do. And
Well, I think I'm just gonna get it out of the way tonight.
Okay. Yeah. So, and then again on Refocused Radio Network, you can also catch Rudy Campos Jr., one of our buddies, who takes care of all the other sports besides the NHL, so NBA playoffs that's happening right now, as well as the upcoming NFL season. I imagine they do some MLB stuff as well, but he does a great job at everything else, as well as some other great shows on that network that are not about sports, but it's just great content, and we're so happy to be a part of it.
Right.
Before, because we're in for a good, as much as you guys were in for a good episode for Toronto's Game 7 loss, I think we're in for a really good treat tonight. As you can see, the third round of the Western Conference starts up today for the Western Conference Finals, and obviously you can see Dallas beats Edmonton 1-0. Crazy game that just I don't know, mystified, I think, everybody how that happened that way.
It got out of hand really quick in the
Yes.
third period.
It did?
Got way out of hand.
We'll go ahead and real quick while I open this up. Again, you see Dallas beats Edmonton 6-3, but the floor, as you said to me the other day, Mr. Besse, the floor is yours. Go ahead and go bananas.
All right. So we were all looking forward to the rematch of Dallas-Edmonton in the Western Conference Finals. Same scenario, Dallas with the home ice, Edmonton going in, having to play the first 2 games in Dallas. Last year, the Oilers won Game 1 on overtime. And so this one, you looked at the first probably 20, 39 minutes of the game was all Edmonton. It was all Edmonton. Leon Draisaitl gets things started 10-19 into the first. Tyler Seguin got a goal to tie it. So we end the first period 1-1. Hey, great road period. I was texting Carson and saying, hey, that's a good road period for the playoffs for the Oilers. And then, all right, second period comes along. The Oilers get a power play goal from Ryan Nugent-Hopkins. And then a little bit later, within about a minute
40,
Evan Bouchard gets a goal. So it's 3-1 Edmonton. And you're going, all right, okay. So I'm at work, right, because I'm watching it. And I left, and my girlfriend and I had to run an errand before we came home. So I said, well, okay, you know what? I'll just keep an eye on it on my phone and stuff like that. And then all of a sudden, pardon my expression, all hell broke loose. Miro Heiskanen gets a power play goal. That was off of the penalty that was taken
at the end of the second
period. All right, that was at 32 seconds in. Then at 3:40, another power play goal by Granlund that tied the game at 3-3. And then Matt Duchene, who they had been talking about, hadn't scored yet in the playoffs, gets his first of the playoffs on the power play. And then all of a sudden, Dallas goes from being down 3-1 in going into the third period to being up 4-3. And then they wind up getting another goal from Sagan and another goal, an empty netter from Lindell. And we get to 6-3 Dallas. And now Edmonton, who looks so good in the first 20 minutes, they're undisciplined. Again, they had that problem in the LA series. They had that problem in the Vegas series. And now they're starting to have that problem in the Dallas series. And the more that you're going to spend time in the penalty box, the more teams like Dallas, who have the best power play in the playoffs, I think, right now. And Stuart Skinner looked shaky after going 2 straight games without giving up a goal, 2 shutouts in a row against Vegas, 1 in Las Vegas, 1 in Edmonton. He comes back and he lays an egg because he wasn't very busy in the first 20, 40 minutes. Mm-hmm. He wasn't. Dallas couldn't get any sustained attack going. Stuart Skinner, look, I didn't get a chance to watch the third period. But before we came on, I was looking at the highlights of the power play goals in the third period. Stuart Skinner is back to where he was in the first 2 games of the LA series. Look, unbalanced, not knowing where the hell he was. He almost misplayed the puck twice in the first 2 periods behind his own net. I just don't know what to say about Stuart Skinner anymore, except for enough is enough. We know Calvin Pickard didn't make the trip to Dallas. And I don't want to put the blame on just Stu Skinner, but he is the guy that if you can't stop the puck, you know what? 3 power play goals. That's, it's 5 on 4. But you've got to be able to give your team a chance. He just totally gets into his head. The first goal was 32 seconds in, and he gets that second goal in, and it's all of a sudden tied. And that's it. Stu Skinner just loses it. He cannot take the pressure. He's not a pressure goaltender. He's not Jake Ottinger. He is not Bobrovsky. He's not a guy who can take the pressure, and it showed tonight. Now, what do? You can't do anything because Pickard's not even in Dallas. He's in Edmonton. You may get Pickard back. I don't know. You may get Pickard back in game 3, game 4. The defense fell apart. Mm-hmm. It was more the discipline, too. They should have got to stay out of the penalty box.
Yeah.
If they stayed out of the penalty box, this would have been a different scenario altogether. If this is a game where you sit there as an Edmonton Oiler fan, and you've got to say, okay, game 1, you have to somehow or another put this behind you, but remember what happened and come out in game 2 on Friday night and play twice as hard. And you got to stay out of the penalty box. And apparently you have to babysit Stu Skinner to get him through a game, which you shouldn't have to do at this level in the third round of the Stanley Cup playoffs. I don't know. I wasn't expecting this at all. Dallas was going to win. Dallas was going to win. Edmonton was going to win. Edmonton was going to win. Still think Edmonton's going to win overall, but they have to come out and with that energy they had in the first 2 periods of the game. And my biggest fear is like every time that the puck goes into Edmonton's end, you have no confidence in Stuart Skinner. And this goes back 2 years now that the Oilers had a chance. The management had a chance to do something and get that goaltender, that number 1 guy in there a few times. A few different names came up over the last couple of years. Montembeault was one that I think of.
John Gibson
came up this year. Stu Skinner is a backup goaltender at the best. If this was middle of the season, he'd be in the AHL right now.
Mm-hmm.
This is a game. It's 1-0 Dallas. Hats off to Dallas for coming back and not giving
Yeah.
up and just roaring back. You got to hand it to Dallas. You can't just say it was all because Stu sucked or the Oilers did undisciplined. Dallas did what they had to do. They came back in the third period and scored 5 unanswered goals. And you're not expecting that in round 3 of the Stanley Cup playoffs, but it happens. Now, Edmonton, you take this, you take your spanking, you take your licking, you go back to the drawing board, you work hard in practice tomorrow, you get out for game 2, still with a chance of turning things around. Now, if you look at the first 40 minutes of the game, you see the Oilers could play with Dallas. If they would have stayed out of the penalty box, it would have been a different game altogether. So I'm one of those. I've been watching this team. It's my childhood team. I grew up with this team when they were in the World Hockey Association. They started in the NHL, and I believe in this team. You never give up, just like Carson believes in the Pittsburgh Penguins. He never gives up on the Pittsburgh Penguins, even though they've had a rough couple of years. You stick with your team, but you got to, as an Oiler fan, you've got to say enough is enough between the pipes.
Mm-hmm.
And you got to hope, and I know like saying this, but you got to hope that Calvin Pickard can come back in game 3 in Edmonton. And you got to hope that the Oilers can come together defensively, stay out of the penalty box on Friday, turn this thing around, get it tied, or you're going to go to Edmonton down 0-2 like you were against LA, and this ain't LA. This is the Dallas Stars. So that's my rant. I just think Dallas did what they needed to do. Dallas was when they needed to be. Dallas may not have been the best team over 60 minutes. They were the best team when they needed to be in that last 20 minutes and scored 5 goals. That's what counts. Dallas deserved the win. Now the Oilers have got to keep a little bit of that to your in yourself for game 2. Move on, short-term memory, and start over again. Get back. Now you just got to get that one win in Dallas.
Yeah. Well, I definitely thank you for giving us probably the best one we've had. So, well, I think one of my Leafs fans probably.
Yeah, your Leafs rants were pretty good though.
But just because the Leafs aren't my team. But anyways, okay. Very concerning if you're Edmonton because you shouldn't have to be hoping Calvin Pickard comes back ASAP. You shouldn't have to worry about that. You should be like, okay, if he's able to, cool. But if he's out for another week and a half, that's fine. Like we're gonna be all right. But you know what? And I don't just say it just to fire you up with Stu, but I believe it's true. Like he had 2 games last series where he got a lot of help from the defense.
Mm-hmm.
And I said last night and before we got on today, when he has to face a team that's offensively potent like Dallas, who can break through, obviously, and they did, he is going to be a hard goalie to win with because he gets rattled quick. And I mean, I can tell watching. I'm 300 some odd, 200 some odd miles away from that arena, and I can feel it watching it on the TV. As soon as Dallas tied that game, like it's done. They're not going to win. Stu's rattled. The crowd's going nuts, yelling his name at him. They've lost all the momentum, and then they took a bad penalty there. They took basically 3 penalties in a row. Bang, bang, bang. A power play that looked horrible on his first try of the game. It looked non-existent. They all of a sudden picked it up and go 3 for 4. And the Oilers, as what they had said on the broadcast, have not been a great penalty killing team this playoffs. That was the difference last year. They were a really good penalty killing team. Now they're struggling on the penalty kill. They've got Stu, who's shaky, and I agree. He had hard times with the puck. It seemed like he was so close to giving it up and getting up a goal right there. He almost had one when in the third period, I believe when it was 4-3, and it almost went right off of Duchesne's leg and in the goal because he didn't know what to do with it, and he backhanded it, and Duchesne almost got it. He did look also unbalanced, in my opinion. Kind of looked like he wasn't set and ready.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't like blaming one loss on our loss on one person, but he's a big reason for that. The mean, it's probably a good thing you didn't watch the third, to be honest, because you'd have been more PO'd. The first shot by Heiskanen, beautiful screen. Then the second one, Granlund beats him where he shouldn't be. I mean, he beats him right above his glove, glove and shoulder. But if Stu just blocks, like if he just kind of is able to square up to the net, he's got it. And then the Duchesne goal, I'm not sure if you saw that. Ugly, ugly look for Stu.
Yeah.
He didn't even move. He didn't move.
No.
He stayed in the corner, and great play by Rupe Hintz on that one because he was going to fish the puck out, and instead he kind of laid flat and let Duchesne get it. He got 2 tries at it, and he scored, and Stu still didn't make it back to the net. He was still sliding.
Yeah.
But yeah, awful loss for the Oilers. They played the better. They were the better team the whole game, as far as you look at it. But Dallas wins. This is going to do one of two things to the Oilers. Either they're going to go into game 2 and be really PO that they lost like that, or they're going to go into game 2 and it's just going to be a colossal mess because they can't fathom that they lost that game because they shouldn't have.
Yeah.
And it's all. Go ahead.
Sorry. No, you go ahead. You finish your thought, Carr.
Discipline. They weren't disciplined. They took 3, and people are complaining about the penalty that Evander Kane took on Matt Duchesne. Well, whether it was a penalty or not, which I feel like it was, but if it wasn't, who cares? You still got to kill the penalty. That happens sometimes where the refs miss a call or screwed up. You got to kill the penalty, and it's not like the Oilers were going a minute and 40, minute 50 in and letting it up. These were goals that were going on in like 20 seconds from the puck drop. So that's not the key to success. They ruined a great game for McDavid and Draisaitl, but yep, the key to this series is Stu. If he's going to be the way he is tonight, this is not going to be a long series. I'll tell you that.
No, and I agree. I totally agree with you, Carson. If Stu can't get his stuff together, like okay, you look at game 3 of the Vegas series, that 0.4 second goal that went in.
Oof.
Okay, that was brutal because the Oilers came back and tied that game. Looked like it was going into overtime. So what happens? They played pissed off. They came out and they won the last 2 games and won the series. So as an Oiler fan, you hope that that's the case. But it all depends on 74 between the pipes. Can he get his head on straight in the next 48 hours?
Yeah.
Can he stop a puck? If he has to, can he be Stuart Skinner of the Western Conference Finals last year, the last 3 games, and then the last 3 games or 4 games of the Stanley Cup final? Can he be that guy? Or is he going to be the Stu Skinner that lost the first 2 games, gave up 12 goals to LA in the first 2 games of that series?
Yeah, and I mean it's brutal too because Dallas's big guns really didn't play that good. Honestly, Rantanen didn't look that great. Robertson looked okay. Hintz looked okay, but they didn't. But they still won the game.
Yeah,
and that's a brutal part if you're the Oilers. But Dallas is a good enough team, like I said, that they can win games like that, and that's what separates some of these teams from the others. Is that they're even when their big guns don't play. I count Tyler Seguin somewhat as a big gun, but he's not one of their top 3 or 4 guys.
No.
But he has 2 goals. Sam Steele has a big assist on that second goal because it basically was his and it went off of Seguin sticking in. I just was concerned about that with Stu, even though it may not have been that big of a sign, but that first goal, because he was just going deep into his net as soon as Seguin got close to him and lets it in. But yeah, rough game for the Oilers. McDavid, Draisaitl looked really good.
Mm-hmm.
I think just the wind was out of the sails as soon as Dallas took the lead. It's like, holy cow, we just gave this thing up in like 5 minutes. And they're forcing things.
Once the snowball effect keeps and it just keeps going and going.
Well, they were just forcing things on net, and you had like 3 or 4 different Oilers getting kind of banged up by getting hit with the puck. You hope that this one, like you said, they forget this game, but they remember what happened. Because that shouldn't happen at this point in the playoffs where you go undisciplined, take those penalties, give up all those goals. The biggest key is just going to be Stu because Otter looked pretty good after he kind of started pretty shaky as well.
Mm-hmm.
He picked it up when it mattered in the third, and even though he may not have had as great of scoring chances against as Stu did, he did what any playoff goaltender does, what great playoff goaltenders does, and he just gave his team a chance and kept him in the game. It doesn't matter if he made 2 saves, he made 10 saves, he made the saves. And he did a great job. But yeah, bad loss for the Oilers, great win for the Stars, and they have I mean, obviously all the momentum, and if they play a full 60 next game, Edmonton's got to watch out a little bit.
Yeah. Well, you go into game 2, the Oilers just got to find a way to stay out of the penalty box and
That
just
was ridiculous.
that
That was
was
awful.
that was like I couldn't believe when I saw 3 power play goals. But it's the hockey. It's Stanley Cup playoffs. It's you're going to have games like this, and I've seen the Oilers have games like this and come back, bounce back. We've seen Dallas have games like the Edmonton had and come back. It's still a long series. It's gonna, you want, as an Oiler, you want to take game 2 and win that one and go into Edmonton tied into Sunday. But it's now just a matter of what Stu is going to come out between the pipes.
I don't know.
You don't have anything right now. You got Rodrigue, was a great.
He hasn't played a game.
He hasn't played a minute in the playoffs yet. And like you were talking about Stu not squaring up. That's the difference between Stu Skinner and Calvin Pickard. Pickard gets square. He's a better east-west goaltender than Stu Skinner ever is.
Well, and you saw that first period. That one kind of shocked me. The little play with Rantanen, I think he was behind the goal line and he almost got it off of Stu's skate. And that's the kind of stuff that we're talking about.
Yeah.
I don't do it on purpose to rag on Stu, but he just doesn't look like he's ready. He's just like he's bouncing around and he's just not square. I don't know. He just looks like he's phased by the moment.
He looks uncomfortable. Game 2 is Friday night, 7:00.
Oh, if he loses that game, honestly, if Stu loses that game the way this one went, if Pickard's not hurt, you might as well just think about giving Rodrigue a try. Because sometimes those young guns that haven't played, they have nothing to lose. I think about this one all the time when it comes to the playoffs. Matt Murray. Mm-hmm. First goalie in NHL history to win 2 Stanley Cups as a rookie, which is crazy to think about that. But
yeah, the way that it all worked out.
The way it worked. But he came in the playoffs because Fleury got hurt, and then he couldn't come back for a while. And we had Jeff Zakoff, who started that 2016 playoffs against the Rangers. But then they just decided to throw Murray in there and see what happened. And he came in there and he was lights out. And he looked cool as a cucumber. He just was ready for anything, and he had nothing to lose because no one expects anything out of you. And it just lessens the expectations. You just play like you're having fun. And sometimes I feel like that might be best for Rodriguez because he's not expected to do much anything. So if he goes in there.
I watched Rodrigue play a couple of games when Stu was out, and they put him in to give Pickard a break. He looked good.
Yeah.
He looked good.
And if he were to have a bad,
like had a great record in the AHL this year.
And if he were to have a bad game, no one would really be pressing him because he's a young gun. But I think he would do pretty okay, honestly. But you're right. The Oilers play different when Stu's not on his game versus when he is. When he's not, they're kind of sheepish. They feel like they have to force everything on the net to try to score because every time the puck comes down the other end, it's a fear that it's going to go behind him.
Yeah. So we'll see what happens.
We'll see what happens.
Has a 1-0 lead going into Friday night's game at American Airlines Center. Now, tomorrow night is game 2 of the Eastern Conference Final between Florida Panthers and the Carolina Hurricanes. And after Florida got off to a great start, a couple nights ago, they will look for a road sweep for the first 2 games as they're in Carolina. And the way that Carolina played and compared to how I don't know if it was a case of Florida is that much better than Carolina or Carolina's that much worse than Florida. I think it's more of a combination of Florida's really good, and Carolina can't keep up with Florida. And I still think this could go 6, but I tell you what, if Carolina drops an egg again, like they did in game 1,
it's not going to be good.
This thing could be over in 5, maybe in 4. It could be a sweep. Florida is just that strong. And I was skeptical of Florida against Tampa, like you. back in the first round. I was skeptical because I'm thinking Florida's been 2 years in a row to the Stanley Cup final. How much gas do they have? Well, it's apparent they got lots of gas because they're up 1-0 in the Eastern Conference Finals against, a tough Carolina team who will grind you to death. But I just don't think Carolina has
The
enough
juice.
oomph to win game 2. I just think they're gonna. Florida's going to come out. It may be a little closer game than it was the other night.
Yeah.
But I see Florida taking this one tomorrow night.
I agree. I think Florida's going to take it. I think they were able to wear Carolina down in game 1, and I think they have the recipe to do that again. Marshy's going to be PO'd because of what happened last game. He shouldn't have gotten that misconduct for that, but he did, and it is what it is. I've said the longtime problems for the Carolina Hurricanes as far as they can go in the playoffs is that they don't have scoring depth. So if they only win games by, 3-1, 2-1 games, they can't participate in these higher scoring games like that. They don't do that. They can't. It's harder for them. They have their occasional game or two where they can score 4 or 5, but it's not very often. And especially against the Florida Panthers team that is built the way they are, with Bob playing the way he's been playing, that's not going to be an easy feat to score more than 2 or 3 a night. And they're going to have to, because Florida's figured out, and even game 1, they figured out how to score a lot. They scored 5 goals in game 1. They figured out how to break through the tough Carolina defense that a lot of teams struggle with, which, credit to Carolina for playing that way. But I think that's a big thing with the Metropolitan Division. A lot of those teams struggle against it because they don't play that speed game to break through the zone. Carolina likes to clog up the neutral zone. But against a team like Florida, they're able to break through that. But at the same time, they're defensively so disciplined and structured that Carolina has to be more risky. And that allows Florida to take it over. I think Florida wins tomorrow. I said this one could be 6 or 7. I could see it being shorter, like you said, 5. Really. I mean, they played so good in game 1. They showed no signs of being tired after that Toronto series. This is a must-win game for Florida or Carolina, because you can't be going back to Florida down 2-0 on the road, and this would be their 14th straight conference final loss in their franchise history. It's not going to be pretty if they lose. I anticipate a better Carolina effort, but I still think Florida's going to be able to get it done and win.
If Carolina loses, this thing will not get to 5. I'm going to say it right now. If Carolina loses tomorrow night, this will not get to 5. It will end in South Florida, and the Panthers will go on to another Stanley Cup final.
And it's funny that, we talk about another sweep, because the other day there's a quote that was coming out from last time these two teams played in the conference finals in 2023 from Brindamore after they got eliminated. And they asked him about, like, what did it kind of feel like to be getting swept? And he didn't feel like they really got swept. They obviously lost the games, but he felt like that the games were a lot closer than they were, which I get where he's coming from as a coach, but you still lost. And they played not good yesterday. They should have been the better team with how much rest they had. They had almost a week off. Florida has just played all these games. Traveling from Toronto to Florida, that's not a short flight.
No.
That's a very, very far flight. And you have to travel from Toronto probably after that game and game 7, so probably at like 11 or midnight, you're going to, you're going to Carolina. You got maybe a rest day or light practice, and you're back on the ice for a game. And they just played really good. I was very, not surprised, but very impressed.
Yeah.
That's going to be a hard team to beat. But yeah, must win game for Carolina in game 2. And I'm not going to say must win for the Oilers, but was just depending on what Stu looks like, that's going to be a game they want to win. I should say that they should want to get done. But yeah, tomorrow's going to be interesting. I just am excited to see what Marshy does.
Yeah, but
I could anticipate that being a chippy game tomorrow, like lots of
Yeah.
stuff going on.
I could see Marshy having a big game tomorrow night just because
you don't want to make him mad.
You don't want to get him mad. You do not want to get him mad.
In overtime, people have, I feel like, forgotten how skilled he is. He's a really good player. As much as he's an agitator, he can put up numbers.
Well, like you said, he was the captain of the Boston Bruins after Zdeno Chara, right? He was the next captain, or was it Bergeron? No,
Bergeron. When Bergeron retired, then they gave it to Marshy.
Yeah. But it's like, he led the team. He led Boston,
but now he's playing with less pressure because he doesn't have a letter. He's just out there going to play now. Yeah. He's another guy on the team, and that's a good place for him. But yeah, we're through game 1 for both of these series. Home team wins 1 in Dallas. Road team wins 1 in Carolina in the Florida series. As Dad normally says, we'll be back on tomorrow, probably around this time,
Not probably about this time
10:30.
because it starts. The game
After
starts at
that game,
7 tomorrow.
should there not be an overtime, of course.
Yeah, and I
We'll
like
be
the
here to
little otter
Otter. Yep.
goalie down here.
Yeah,
I
I was
love the
gonna
little
try to
otter.
put one of a bad stew something, but I couldn't do it. But
No, I like
we're gonna
I like the otter.
yeah, we'll be back on tomorrow to recap Game 2 of Florida Carolina and preview Game 2 of Dallas Edmonton again. But yeah, we always love doing these shows. It's fun when we get a little rant in there. We'll hopefully in your case that the Oiler or Stu looks a bit better in Game 2. But if it doesn't, we're gonna be in for another
Yeah, it might
a
be.
good one on
We'll
Friday.
just, and I look at it, and I look at it this way. After the game was over tonight, I looked at it going, a few years ago, and I've told Carson this before, and I think I've
You
actually
said it on the show.
podcast. I used to get so mad when the Oilers played a game like they played tonight, and I would just be day or two, and it would take me. I couldn't wait for the next game to come because I was so ticked off that the Oilers played so bad. And now it's just like I sat back and go, you know what? My childhood team is in the conference finals. My childhood team is in, the Final Four. So it's like I have nothing to complain about. They have a stink game like they had tonight. There's how many other teams aren't even there right now. So if you're an Oiler fan, and I haven't even seen any of the stuff.
Oh, that's gonna be fun.
And okay,
You got to say you know what you got to do. You got to pull out your Vancouver medicine from last year, I think, to
calm
spark the
down,
oil.
folks.
Yeah.
Just calm down. Just calm down, folks. Yeah, we may have to come up with something like that. But I just Carson and I love this game so much. Like I said, Carson has watched the Penguins win 3 cups, and he's seen them not make the playoffs. And I've seen the Oilers out of the playoffs for most of the 90s, most of the 20s, and just now starting to get back into it. So you just stick with your team through the end,
ups and downs,
and you enjoy every moment that you get to watch your team play. And let's put it this way, and I'm going to come out and say it. Dallas happens to win. I'm a Texan. Still have a team in the game. I would love if it can't be Edmonton,
it would be Dallas.
It would be Dallas. So, but anyways, we, like Carson says, we're both passionate about this game. We're both passionate about our teams, and it's just fun watching hockey into June. It's better. I'm sorry, it's better watching the NBA because the NBA kind of is boring right now. Only the good thing is that the MVP come from Canada, from Oklahoma
City.
But all right, yeah, Carson, love the otter picture, love the intro. Does a great job with all the graphics, and like Carson said, we'll be on probably about this time tomorrow after the Florida Carolina game 2 in the Eastern Conference Finals, and then Friday night it's going to be a little weird. I'm going to be moving that day, so I'll be probably on my phone somewhere doing the post game with Carson. But thanks a lot, Car. Great job. And in the meantime, and in between time, everybody, don't shake your head. Have a great hockey night.
Bye, Dad.
Bye, son.